Hello friends, welcome back. A lot of you know I did an infamous disturbing movie scenes iceberg that was from Reddit not too long ago, and a lot of you in the comments wanted me to make my own. So here I am today. I am suffering for you. Here is the iceberg. We have 7 tiers today, starting at already disturbing and going all the way down to extremely disturbing. I wanted to order this from mainstream to obscure, but I think it's better to go by disturbing content as you go down. I'm gonna give you some quick context to how this works, but of course there's chapters below if you need them. So because this is my personal one, it's less of infamous disturbing scenes and more of disturbing scenes that stuck with me and traumatized me, and I think a lot of horror fans. I did try not to cross over too much with the other iceberg that I have already done. There are a few picks that had to go on my list. I didn't want to include too many niche splatter films because I feel like it's really low-hanging fruit, but all of these films are very disturbing. There are a lot of intense themes. This is a horror list today, so there is no American History X, Train Spotting. I've gone with complete horror, and to standardize this, I've used IMDb to make sure that it aligns with the genres there, just because I know it's a huge topic, what is a horror and what isn't a horror, and I wanted to stay on topic today. If you do want a non-horror movie iceberg, I can definitely put that together for you. As I was listing and planning this, I started writing one and putting everything that didn't fall into this category into that list. It's nice to break things up, and that way we can cover more topics. As always, add your own scenes in the comments down below. There's always so much to cover when making these icebergs that I just have to commit to a certain number, otherwise I'm never gonna finish it. I'm gonna work on it for years to perfect it. I'm very happy with this list though. There will be full spoilers for any context that is needed for each scene. I'm not gonna really go into it if it doesn't need an explanation, because I love a lot of these films. I want you to explore them yourself. Apologies for any tweaked language. I know I look like the idiot in the situation. The reason I have to tweak language sometimes is because smaller creators sometimes get hit a little bit harder with this kind of stuff, and if this video gets age restricted, it means it won't be pushed out to even people who subscribe. Don't worry, we're still going to be very detailed. The only thing that I really need to tell you is I'll probably say the word barrel instead of a, but it's pretty straightforward with all of these descriptions. So let's jump into it. Tier 1, let's go. The Others, I'm Your Daughter. This scene terrified me when I first saw it. It's more than a scare. It's definitely a disturbing moment for me and a pivotal moment of finding out what I find disturbing in films. The Others is such a haunting film where everything feels intentionally off-putting and strange, and you have to discover the mystery. It's set in 1945, and we follow a woman living in her beautiful mansion with her 2 children who are suffering from an illness. And in this scene, Nicole Kidman, who is Grace, enters a room to check on her daughter. Her daughter is playing with a puppet under a veil, concealing her face. But when Grace enters the room, she does not see her daughter. She sees the hand of an elderly lady. Moving around her body, we can hear her daughter Anne's voice. It sounds like this strange woman in her house is mimicking her daughter straight to her face. Grace demands to know where her daughter is, but the voice coming out is confused and scared, and she says, "Are you mad? I am your daughter." Grace attacks this figure and a struggle ensues, but when she rips off the veil, it's revealed to be her daughter, and Grace is left in shock. This was such a simple scare, and switching out the 2 characters, it just worked really well, and it was so off-putting. It went exactly with the tone of the film. A very good start to disturbing cinema. I am not a religious girl, but the next scene really freaks me out, and I still, to this day, am scared of waking up and seeing someone in this exact position. The Exorcism of Emily Rose is obviously an exorcism film. It's based on a true story, and in this scene, the possession has begun. And although Jennifer Carpenter is always known as Dexter's sister, for me, she will always be Emily Rose because of this scene. So this comes from the perspective of her friend who comes to stay in her dorm when she is freaking out about the events that are happening to her. He falls asleep and wakes up alone on her bed to find her staring at him in a contorted position from the floor. He jumps up and crawls over on the floor towards her, and her stare does not waver. She is locked in the entire time. He slowly approaches, and once he's close enough, she opens her mouth and lets out this horrendous, inhuman, sharp growl. It's It's very short and sharp, and it is kind of a jump scare, but it really freaked me out, the whole idea of waking up to her across the room in so much pain and agony, and knowing that that is not really the person that you fell asleep in the room with, and what happened when you were asleep. Just everything about this makes my brain go wild. Next, we have The Witch, and The Witch is known for its dark imagery, but particularly one very quick shot in a bigger scene. The movie is about an isolated family in 1630 New England that are dealing with evil in their home. And in this scene, towards the climax of the film, 2 younger children are asleep in the barn, and this scene, it is 2 scenes kind of intercut together, and it is important to the height and tension of it. So it's the 2 younger children who are trapped in this barn, and then we see the mother in the house wake up, and she awakens to find 2 of her other children who have died earlier in the film in her room. We then cut back to the younger children in the barn, and they hear the sound of rustling, and then back to the mother, who starts to have this kind of conversation with her baby that is not around anymore, and she's thinking it must be hungry, and she's getting ready to nurse it. So she sits on a chair, starts undoing her top, and then we go back to the younger children in the barn, who move closer to see the reveal of a witch feeding from the nanny goat. And then back to the mother. Finally, this is the shot. It's a full body reveal, and she isn't feeding her baby at all. A large raven is plucking at her breast, and it is horrifying. It's just a very dark imagery moment. Obviously, the mother is traumatized by what's happened to her children, and then this evil is taking hold of that. And the imagery, just with this disturbing, eerie tone, it's cinema. Next, we have The Shining. This scene really messed me up as a kid watching it. The Shining is obviously based on the Stephen King novel, and it's about a man who goes to live in a isolated hotel for the winter with his family. He's there as a caretaker, but the horrors of this building, this facility, take charge of him and his rage, and he spirals. My pick for one of the most disturbing scenes in this film is when Jack, the lead character, heads to room 237. The reason I find this scene so off-putting is because of the sound. There is no dialogue at all, but he is called to this room, and he walks in hypnotized by this woman who is sitting in the back of the room. Naked, she gets out of the bath, and they walk and stand together. They start kissing, and then he catches a glimpse in the mirror of who she truly is, or really what has happened to her over time. Her flesh is worn and decaying, and then we cut to the scene of her in the bath, and we realize that this is where she would have expired, her true body rotting. But we also then cut to Danny, Jack's son, during the scene, who is disturbed by his shining ability while this is happening. He is seeing it and experiencing it in a way, and his body is just shaking. The music swells, and the woman begins to laugh, knowing she has tricked him. When you know more about the Shining and the backstory of this woman, from the book mostly, you understand that she has a very strange background where she would lure bellboys into her room. So it does really tie into her character, but it's the sound design of this entire film, and especially the scene where it's just this shrill atmosphere, and then her evil laughter, and the way he just leaves this room, and knowing his child in a way has experienced it. It's a very confusing, disturbing moment. Next, my favorite girl, Misery, the Hobbling scene. This scene went down in history for its brutality, and of course because of Kathy Bates' Oscar-winning performance. The movie follows a famous writer who, after a car accident, is taken in by a sweet woman who ends up being his worst nightmare and his #1 fan. And leading into this scene, he has tried to escape her house, and she's caught on and decides to put an end to it. She starts the scene by telling him that she is going to perform an operation called Hobbling. She explains that this was done in the early days of the Kimberley diamond mine. They would perform this on native workers who stole the diamonds. This is so they could still work but not run, which is what she is aiming to do with him. She wants him to continue to write and not be able to get away. Putting wooden blocks between his legs, she picks up a sledgehammer and swings, breaking his ankle on one side and then swinging again for the other side and ending with God, I love you. In the book, this is completely different because she cuts them off. So it is really interesting knowing how effective this scene is, and it is the toned down version. But it has been reported by cast and crew that Kathy Bates actually cried during this scene because she hated violence in films. So I think she did find it as disturbing as some of us. Next, Pet Sematary. This was on the other iceberg, but I had to include Zelda's scene because I am a huge Pet Sematary fan. But Zelda's scene is something that's stuck with me my whole life and has cemented itself in my brain. But the idea of this scene in particular is a callback to earlier in the film where the mother of the family, Rachel, is explaining her childhood living with Zelda, who was her sick sister. They used to hide in their house. She talks about how she was a secret and her whole family actually wanted her to end. And the rawness and vulnerability in that conversation, talking about a family member that way, is brutal beyond. But also the character of Zelda, she's actually played by a grown man, even though originally they did want to cast a young girl. That's who she's meant to be, but it is seen through the eyes of Rachel. So you've got to keep that in mind. It's meant to be disturbing. It's meant to be scarring for her. But in the actual scene that I have put on this iceberg, it is towards the height of the film, and there's a lot going on with grief and death with everyone else, and so these traumas kind of resurface. And Rachel hears Zelda calling out to her in a house, and she goes upstairs and opens the door, and Zelda is there. And this is current day, so Rachel is older, but Zelda still looks exactly the same. And in the scene, Zelda scurries towards the camera and says, "I finally came back for you, Rachel. I'm going to twist your back like mine, and you'll never get out of bed again." The scene is over exaggerated, but it's just a horrific moment. And again, it's the psychological element of her memories and connected to death, and almost her shame of how she felt and saw her sister who was going through this illness, and that resurfacing with the current events within the film. It is so good. I love Pet Sematary. I just realized I've broken my rule for the next film because I don't think that this one is defined by IMDb as a horror movie. I'm not perfect, guys, but the tent scene needs to be here. It needs to be here. It is pure horror, this scene, at least this scene. So this scene feeds on everyone's fears of ghost encounters. If you haven't seen The Sixth Sense, I'm sure you've heard the famous line, "I see dead people," and that is Cole's experience. That's all you need to know about this moment. Cole is dealing with his sixth sense, and he has created a little sanctuary, a little red tent, kind of like a fort, put together by blankets, and inside here he has a lot of sacred items to him, religious imagery, trinkets, and things that make him feel safe. And in this scene, he is starting to feel something is in his house, so he retreats to this tent, and he scurries in there, and he turns on his torch, and you can just see the glow of cold air, signaling a presence is nearby. His tent then starts to unclip, and before him, out of nowhere, an apparition that is solid appears, and it's a little girl who is vomiting. And it is terrifying. It's exactly what you fear when you think of seeing a ghost. And it is a clue into her tragic death, which is explored later in the film. And it's a disturbing, heightened feeling with both of them being so vulnerable. Next, I know this one got some of you guys. I know it did. This is a masterclass in how to make a scare that will stick with your viewers and disturb them. I saw her face from The Ring. You know this scene. It truly proves that timing and the choice of the reveal is very important. And I have seen this as we go through the iceberg. There's one in Midsommar and there's one in Martyrs, which they let your mind wander and they don't have to show you the pain that is inflicted on the subject, just the reveal to do all of the work psychologically, all of the damage, I guess, psychologically to the viewer. This is towards the start of the film, so not much context is needed. We just know that there's been a mysterious death of a teenage girl, and it's the lead, Rachel's niece. Now she's at the funeral reception where she talks to her sister Ruth, and they are together in the kitchen discussing what happened. Ruth is desperate for answers and describes the events, pleading with her sister Rachel, who is a journalist, to find the truth. But Rachel is unpersuaded until Ruth says, "Rachel, please, I saw her face." And then we cut to a shrieking sound and a girl sitting in a closet. Her face is contorted. As they open the closet door to reveal her, her neck kind of slumps to the side. It's all one swooping action, especially with the shrieking sound. And it is terrifying what has happened to this teenager. You can't even imagine what has made her face look like that. And she ended in complete terror and fear. But also the way that it's executed is really interesting because they're both standing there having this conversation at the aftermath of a funeral reception. And it seems like a safe, quiet place for grieving, and then they just cut that straight into it and no one was expecting it. It is so well executed and one of the most scary parts of the whole film. I think that's more scary than anything with Samara. It really stuck with me and disturbed me for maybe life. Next, we have Lake Mungo, Alice's phone footage. This one you need to watch as a full film to understand. This is a big spoiler, obviously. It's a found footage Australian horror that is formatted like a mockumentary. So we have interviews and sit downs and it's quite slow. There's a lot of growing tension, but also the film just feels completely uneasy and has a lot of twists to it. But we followed the story of a grieving family after their daughter Alice drowned. And in this scene, they finally find this footage that kind of connects this mystery around her death. It's a phone that she's buried in Lake Mungo, which is in the outback. It's a tourist hotspot. They find it and they turn it on, and this is the scene. This is what we see. The footage plays in tandem with audio from Alice's secret meeting with a psychic, and when this is happening, the footage reveals Alice herself meeting her dead self. There is this figure and it's just slowly approaching the camera. And then they cut to a shot of Alice's body in the morgue that the father saw to identify her body after the drowning. And it is horrendous, but it's very similar to the figure that she saw when she was still alive, where you see this kind of pixelated character and then you see the flash of the expired Alice. It changes the whole perception of the film and it just feels dangerous and disturbing and very uneasy. Next we have Color Out of Space, which is based on H.P. Lovecraft's work. I will say it is kind of goofy. I very much acknowledge that, but that's kind of what makes it so disturbing because the tone does not match at all what we're seeing on screen. The movie is about a family that are living in a remote farmhouse which is struck by this color that makes things change. And this does have Nicolas Cage in it. I love Nicolas Cage, but he is Cajun out in this movie. But it is more so about the mother character who unfortunately has cancer, and the movie becomes a metaphor for her illness, which makes this scene so much more horrific. Basically, what has happened is the younger brother and the mother have fused after being hit by some of this color lightning. And in this scene, they're dragged to the attic by their family to be hidden. It's almost like Zelda again, you know, like they're hiding a dark secret, but it's the way they are merged together. The son is like on her back. It is awful. He is crying out and he's a young boy, but he sounds much younger in the audio. Sounds like a baby screaming out for help. There is squelching, and then the daughter brings in a dish and feeds her mother's face what is left of her body like a dog. And it is just so uncomfortable. It definitely changes the atmosphere because, as I said, it is kind of a goofy film, but this does not fit. It is too disturbing for this film. Speaking of some goofy films that I love Hellraiser. I'm not saying Hellraiser is goofy, but it is satirical in a way, and I've never seen someone end in such a horrific way while smiling. The movie follows Frank, who is resurrected by his lover, and she does this by sacrificing others, but the keepers of the underworld, which are known as Centipedes, are not happy with Frank's departure, and they finally get to him, and in this one is iconic scene, they have finally found him, and he is strung up by chains across his whole body, his face stretched out completely, and he licks his lips, and his final words are, "Jesus wept." And this was ad-libbed by the actor. They did a couple of different takes, and he was meant to say, "fuck you." And with that, we're on to tier 2. One film I found was completely lacking from the other Iceberg I did was the Nightmare on Elm Street scene, Glenn's death. This death is insane, is it not? It just does not compare to anything else that happens in this film, or really the franchise. But is it wild to say out of the big three, Jason, Freddy, and Michael, that I find this to be the most intense death and the most memorable? I don't know, is it? Nightmare on Elm Street is the story of an entity that can reach the children of this town through their dreams. So the aim is to not fall asleep, and unfortunately Glenn falls asleep, and in this quick and very memorable scene. He is on his bed with a TV in his lap. He falls asleep and he sinks into a giant sinkhole. It just appears in the middle of his bed. Him and the TV and everything falls into this and out spurts so much fluid, so much vital fluid. It is just a wave. It's like the Shining doors with the elevator. It is unreal and I was not expecting it. But the cherry on top of the scene is when his mother enters his room hearing kerfuffle and sees what is left of her son. This next one is a little bit personal, but I do think it is very disturbing. Nope, Gordy's birthday. This happens at the very start of the movie, so you do not need any context. This has been a fear of mine since the Oprah interview. I'm sure a lot of people know what I'm talking about. In 2009, Oprah interviewed a woman who was attacked by a chimpanzee. There has been numerous podcasts about what happened and the actual events around it, but it resulted in her getting a face transplant, and I do think that this is directly connected to this film. There are different scenes and moments that really show that that is where the idea for some of this came from. Obviously, Gordy and this birthday scene have to do with the themes of the movie, with control and spectacle of entertainment and animals in entertainment. But the scene is a flashback to a fictional 90s sitcom where a chimpanzee named Gordy stars alongside with human actors. But during the taping, Gordy is startled by a balloon, the sound of a balloon popping, and this completely changes everything. We cut from the camera overlay POV to black, and there is just screaming. And then suddenly there is a live camera that is roaming and it peers into the set of the show, and we see Gordy just finishing off the cast, laying into them as they're laying on the floor. They have ended or are barely still with us. There is vital fluid everywhere and he is just striking them again and again and again, attacking them as their bodies are just laying there. At the start, we do watch this from what feels like a roaming camera because it comes from the back of the set to the front, but we do see that the young boy who's the actor in this TV show is hiding under a table nearby. A man tries to interfere and reason with Gordy, but Gordy then chases him and you just hear him fall. Something happens because it goes silent and then you just hear the thudding of Gordy, just wailing on him. Gordy returns to the set and sees the boy and they lock eyes, and it is terrifying because you're seeing this little boy huddle underneath this table and then Gordy's slowly approaching him. But Gordy actually holds out his hand to fist bump the kid, a gesture of their old connection and how he was just a few minutes prior to everything unraveling. But just as this moment where they're about to touch, Gordy is ended by a barrel. Someone has finally got security, they have come and they have ended him. For anyone who does not like monkeys like me, or chimpanzees or apes or whatever you want to call them, I don't like them. And I did not like this scene. I think out of all of the Scream movies, the most and maybe only disturbing part is the opening scene. A lot goes on during this whole opening segment, but in the first Scream movie, everyone thought that Drew Barrymore was going to be the main character, the final girl, and they pulled a complete psycho on us, killing her off in the opening scene, which ends in a very horrific way. I'm going to talk about more the ending and the parents finding her because that's when the reveal takes place. So there's back and forth between Ghostface and Drew Barrymore's character Casey, and he finally grabs her outside on the lawn and there is a wrestle between the two and he pierces her, but with her injury she cannot scream. Just as this is happening, her parents roll into the driveway and start walking into the house. She can see them and she is attempting to scream out to them, and it's so crazy how close she would have been to getting true help, how if they had only looked or if she could only scream louder, she may have been saved. But they go into the house and they see that the house is completely wrecked from the scuffle between the two. They try to call the police, and while they're doing that, they realize that she still has the cordless phone on, which is connected to the landline, and they can hear her on the other side struggling. So her mother is listening to her daughter being attacked. The phone line goes dead and they decide to try and get help elsewhere, but when they leave the house, they see Casey and she has been strung up on a tree, and it's the most horrific way. The placement, the blocking of her is wild. It looks like she has ended herself. She's strung up by a rope. And it's just awful. And her parents are screaming. It feels so different after that because we go into more of the teen drama. And I think that that scene often gets forgotten because how the movie ends is so much more fun than how it begins. Speaking of scenes in classic films that I think get overlooked, the tree attack. I squirm every time I watch Evil Dead. I love Evil Dead, but this scene I could definitely do without. It is very effective though. The film is about a group of friends who stumble upon an ancient book that accidentally awakens demonic forces. And during the film, Cheryl is in the woods by herself and she is attacked by trees, vines that result in this scene where her clothes are pulled off and she is slammed down to the ground with these vines trapping her legs, her arms, and her neck, and they spread her legs apart and then things travel upwards. It goes on for quite a while. It's a very intense scene. She does get up and run off afterwards, but it really does leave you startled. And I wouldn't say it happens so slowly, but the vines crawl up very slowly, so it's very uncomfortable. Sam Raimi actually addressed the scene later, saying that he regretted putting it in the film. He said, "I think it was unnecessarily gratuitous and a little too brutal. My goal is not to offend people. It is to entertain, thrill, scare, make them laugh, but not offend them. I think my judgment was a little wrong at the time." I'm really throwing you guys around everywhere. Next, we have The Lodge, Laura's death. This was so shocking to me. It happens, I laugh because I'm uncomfortable. This happens at the start of the film, so you don't need much context. All you need to know is that there is a husband and a wife, Richard and Laura, who have been separated for some time. And the scene prior to this, they have a conversation where Laura is hoping that they're going to have a talk and something is going to happen. They might get back together, but Richard actually tells her that he has plans to marry his now girlfriend, Grace. Laura is played by Alicia Silverstone. This is such a interesting role for her, short and very interesting. So in this scene, we watch Laura walk around the room. She's straightening up the table, then she sits down. We see that she has drunk some wine. She finishes a little sip. She takes off her necklace and then she reaches into her bag and she is searching for a moment. You're very unsure about what's going to happen next. You do not know the direction of the film. It has not really been set up. So when she pulls out a barrel and offs herself right there, it is startling and it sets off a chain of events for the rest of the film, but it really shook me. And then you kind of play back the sadness and what has happened in the prior scene, and it very much set the tone for the entire film. That is a very disturbing film that is underrated, I think. Society is a movie that is so over the top and the props and effects are so well done, but it's so extravagant that a lot of the true tone is hidden in the 80s splatter body horror. The movie is a razor-sharp satire that gleefully pushes boundaries, and it's about Bill, who is a seemingly average Beverly Hills teenager who begins to suspect that his wealthy family is part of a grotesque cult made up of the social elite, and his worst fears are confirmed in the iconic Shunting scene. This scene is a montage of hideous, grotesque moments. Shunting is when they use other people, they absorb their nutrients through different parts of their skin. It's a skin-on-skin contact that looks like an orgy, but people can join and they become each other. It is disgusting. And there are very memorable images in these scenes. People are turned completely inside out. There's a lot going on. But in the most horrific Shunting moment, Bill's friend David is with him. He is pushed to the ground and one of the ringleaders is on top of him. Everyone is kind of already joined to him. They're all deformed. They're all sticky. And the man on top of him says, "And now to get to the bottom of this," makes a fist with his hand and then shoves it into Bill. And you don't see the full reveal, but you hear the screams and it's just an horrific assault scene. It's horrific. That whole movie has such disturbing themes. Good luck. If you haven't watched Society, enjoy. If you like body horror, you do need to watch it. I think that this might be the scene I quote the most. It's all for you, Damien. I say it all the time. And it's connected to a very disturbing scene. The Omen is the story of a young adopted boy who turns out to be very evil, let's say that. And in this scene, it's a birthday party, extravagant birthday party where all the kids are playing. They're on carousels. They're with their families. It's a huge birthday party. As Damien is on the carousel going around and around, we hear this haunting voice calling out, "Damien, Damien, look at me, Damien." And we cut to his nanny, who is standing on the side of the building, on the roof, on the ledge. And it's revealed that she has a large rope around her neck. And before anyone can do anything, she says, "It's all for you." And then she steps off the ledge and her body crashes into the window underneath. Huge shattering sound, just complete quiet. Everyone goes quiet and the kids are just watching. So many little baby eyes, innocent eyes watching this happen, and it's disturbing because of that. There's just so many layers, but that scene always stuck with me. And the last part of this tier is the kite flying scene in Pet Sematary. I had to include this one as well. It really just sets up the whole idea of the theme of the movie, which is grief and death and our relationship with that. This takes place during a picnic in the front yard of a family's new house. It's a sunny day and the kids are taking turns flying a kite, and when the young kid takes control, the family gets distracted. Unfortunately, he loses the string and starts chasing onto the road. The family are still laughing and looking away, but when they turn around, they realize a truck is plummeting down the hill and they can see what is about to happen. The dad gets up, he starts running towards the kid. The mum is screaming, "Get the baby!" And as the father's trying to get him so close, he falls, stumbles, and the kid is hit by the truck. You don't see anything, you just see a bloody shoe on the road. It's one of the most awful things I can think that can happen to a family. Ugh, it's awful. But in tier 3, it only gets worse from here, and it's gonna get a lot more uncomfortable than that, because we're gonna talk about the crucifix scene. Why do people not talk about this when they talk about disturbing elements? I was always scared as a kid to watch The Exorcist, and nothing could have prepared me for this scene. If you don't know about the film, Reagan is a young girl who has been possessed by a demonic entity, and in this scene she is in bed upstairs and her mum is downstairs. Her mum starts hearing her daughter scream, and she runs up the stairs and opens the door to see objects just flying everywhere, crashing mainly at the window, and Reagan's moans are just echoing throughout the whole house. And when she turns to see her daughter, she is using a crucifix to stab her lower region. The daughter saying, "Let Jesus fuck you." Vital fluid everywhere. Her mum leaps forward to try and stop her from harming herself. She then grabs her mother's face and pushes it towards her region, screaming, "Lick me." And then her mother falls back against the wall. It is so... And this is all topped off by Reagan following her mum with her head, which goes in a 180-degree turn, following her across the room and saying, "Do you know what she did? Your cunting daughter." This is so shocking and disturbing. I can't even imagine what it would have been like in the 70s seeing this. Next we have Saint Maud, the ending. And this does need context. Throughout the film, we follow Maud, who is a religious in-home nurse who becomes obsessed with saving her patient's life. The film has a true undertone of, is this real? Is this woman okay? Are these hallucinations? Reliable narrator, not sure. And in this final scene, we watch as Maud walks towards the ocean. It has taken place after a very gnarly scene prior, but she does walk towards the ocean. She has a plastic bag in her hands, and as she goes into a public beach, we get the atmosphere that it's quite peaceful. People are walking, there's dogs barking, you know, there's people around, and she drops her plastic bag, and it is revealed inside that there is flammable liquid. She pours this over herself. You can hear people in the background. Somebody says, "Someone stop her." And well, she uses a lighter to set herself up. And this is where the religious themes take hold, because then all of these people who are on the beach, suddenly they're all spaced out perfectly and they drop to their knees as she has become holy. She has become a saint. She gets wings and they are witnessing a miracle. Everything she has endured in the film was real, and we should have believed her. But this completely falls apart because we're given a quarter of a second reveal into, and I guess this is up for interpretation, but into what really happened. And for a quarter of a second, they flash on the screen her actually up in flames and her body and screams, and I guess the realistic flip side of the story. It had people gasping, and then it cuts straight to the title and the end of the film. And the way that it gives you a quarter of a second to process what just happened, stunning, shocking, depraved, disturbing, and perfect. Next, we have Midsommar Bloody Eagle, and this scene is exactly what I'm talking about with the reveals and what we were talking about earlier with The Ring. I saw her face, and how you don't have to show the graphic scenes and the infliction. Sometimes the reveal is much worse. Midsommar is the story of Dani, whose life is torn apart after a traumatic incident with her family pushes her to go on this trip to Sweden and visit a village that are having a Midsommar festival. But of course, once they're there, they realize that it is a cult and they have very intense rituals. This is the result of one of those rituals. In this scene, Christian enters a barn to hide, and he believes there might just be chickens in here. You can hear them. But when he walks in, he sees Simon, who has been missing for some of the film. He is strung up on the roof in the position of the bloody eagle. This is when your lungs are separated through your back, and the way it is spread, it looks like wings. He has flowers in his eyes, and it is the most peculiar position for a body to be in. It's startling. Christian gets really close up to him and is having a look at the details. It is a lot to take in, and the scene is very fast. But I think what also adds to it is he is kind of creeping around and hiding, but he goes in here hearing the chickens, and there are chickens in there, and they're just roaming around the grounds like nothing is happening. It really shows the idea that everyone was kind of living their life as much as possible in this film and walking around, and Simon has been here the whole time like this. The position he is in is a Viking death that is known as one of the most painful ways to go. So you can only imagine what actually happened, and that is what I was saying about the reveal. You don't have to hear and see and feel everything to just see the final effect and know that it was horrific. After this, someone comes in and blows something into Christian's face and he passes out. I feel like this one is worse than the bear death in this film. I had to do a Saw trap just because I was so disturbed by some of these ones, and this one, I can't stop thinking about it. It is from Saw 10, Saw X. It is the surgery trap. The brain surgery. The films are collections of different traps, different situations that people are put in to prove that they should live by going through horrific puzzles to change their outlook on life. That is a very strange way of describing it, but Saw's a strange guy. And in this film, a guy is put into this certain trap. He's strapped to a chair, and the reason he's there is because he has pretended to perform brain surgery, and now he is made to do so on himself to try and get out. This contraption is really interesting. It's all custom built. It is hefty. It's all over his head. He can barely move, but he is given all of the right tools to start digging. And he is given a camera so he can see what he's doing to himself. The idea is that he needs to get a portion of his matter that will have a chemical reaction with something in front of him and release a key. And he starts going to town when the timer goes off. Yes, he's timed, and he has to start digging around in his own noggin, and it is so uncomfortable to watch. I found it to be beyond graphic. It's just disturbing to me. He does fail this, and we then see him end with this thing around his head closing in with some hot coils onto his skull. So all around, not a great time for anyone watching. I mean, it is for people who like graphic scenes. Antichrist, don't worry, there's 2 entries for this, and this is the first one. The controversial Lars von Trier psychological drama horror is about a grieving couple that go to a remote cabin after an accident took their son. The husband is a psychiatrist who tries to treat his wife's trauma, but her mental state deteriorates and it leads to disturbing physical and psychological terror. This scene is the beginning of the end, and she finds him, and in her delusional state, she attacks him, jumping on him, saying that he is cheating on her or accusing him of that. They both fall to the ground. They start having relations. And then suddenly she just gets up and she grabs this huge log and she throws it onto him, aiming for his member. And she makes contact. He passes out because of the injury. Unfortunately, he is still up. And so she finishes him while he is passed out. It only gets worse from here, guys. And as she is doing so, he spurts vital fluid out of there, which is very concerning. And he is still passed out. So she decides to take a wrench and lodge that into his leg. And then, being the resourceful girl she is, she grabs a grindstone and attaches it to this wedge kind of bolt. Oh, she sticks her finger in there to make sure it's the right size, and she wedges this onto his leg. So basically he has a screw and a bolt, which is a grindstone, attached to him. I don't know how, but after this he does wake up, and there is more. Don't worry, we'll get back to it. But a lot happens in this one scene, in this one location, in a span of maybe 5 minutes. The attacking, the fluid, and then the bolt. added onto his leg so he cannot move. Tag is a 2015 Japanese fantasy horror, and this scene is very odd, but it is the catalyst of the film. So this is a little taste of what sets the film off, but we follow a girl who is on a bus. There's actually 2 school buses side by side. They're going down this winding, beautiful road, and it's all in slow motion. Very pretty music's playing. All of the girls are in uniform. They're all laughing. They're all joking together. Slow motion, very, very pretty. That's the whole point. In fact, they take out a pillow and someone starts having a pillow fight. So it's very over the top. You know, feathers are going everywhere. And suddenly 2 girls start making fun of our main character, who we see her perspective for a lot of this, because she is journaling, and this causes her to drop her pen. And she reaches down to go grab the pen back, and then just as this is happening, a unseen force splits both buses into where she's crouched down. It just misses her head, and it splits everything. So every single person is cut. It's very Ghost Ship, that scene in Ghost Ship. It's very much like that. Completely, sharply, even the whole bus, the actual vehicle itself, everything just goes. She stands up with her pen. The bus rolls to a halt because obviously the driver has been fruit ninja'd, and she just watches in shock. It is a shocking scene. It's a very strange film, and it makes it very memorable, that scene particularly. Next, it's hard for me to say, but I do think that this is one of the most disturbing scenes I've seen from the past 5 years that have been released, new release films. When Evil Lurks is an Argentinian horror about 2 brothers who find evil being birthed by a possessed man, and they decide to dispose of his body. And they do this in the wrong manner, and then the evil spreads. And in this part of the film, Pedro, one of the brothers, has gone to his ex-wife's house to collect his 2 sons that he has with her. But the mother, Sabrina, and her new husband, Leo, and their daughter together, Vicky, is in the next room playing with a large dog. Pedro enters, he starts arguing with them, telling them they need to leave. They obviously think he's a little bit unhinged and something has happened. They want him to get out of the house, and while this is happening, Vicky is playing with the dog. And what we realize a little bit later is that the dog would have been infested with this evil from something that happened just seconds earlier. And so her and the dog are playing, everyone's arguing in the other room, and then the dog just switches and just starts going at her and just dragging her around the house by the face. And it's the most shocking, disturbing moment I was not expecting. And the parents are still arguing. Their other son, he runs into the room and he's like screaming at them, the dog, it's got her. And it's horrendous. And the dog takes her, dragging her out, running her through the streets. Leo then runs to go get the girl. It is a whole kerfuffle because Pedro is telling him not to use a barrel on the dog because that will lead to things spreading. He obviously thinks he's crazy, but then Pedro goes and gets his kids and gets them in the car, his 2 sons that he had with her. I know it's confusing, so many characters, but they are in the car and then they hear the barrel go off. The dog has ended. But Vicky, the young girl, she's dancing around and she's fine. She's returned to her mother, no scratches, which is a sign to show that the evil has probably spread to her. So while that's all happened, Leo then is in a car and just plummets straight towards his wife and his daughter, smashing into them. It's just endless. First it's the kid, then the dog. They're attacked again, and he wakes up from the crash and he still sees the girls just laughing. So the evil has spread, but it's just a shocking scene, beyond shocking. That movie is so intense, and we do have another scene to talk about in a little bit, but it's so insane seeing how that kid was just dragged around that apartment. I'm sure I've cut this out, but I keep apologizing for things being really disturbing. But this next one, I hate talking about this scene. I hated rewatching this scene. Gerald's game, we talked about degloving in the other Iceberg, but the one that really got to me the moment is the Eclipse. If you've seen this movie, you know what I'm going to talk about, and it's not going to be comfortable. So this movie is about a woman who is stuck in a room and she's handcuffed to the bed. Most of the film is stuck in this room where she finally has to face her inner demons. And one of her inner demons finally comes to us in a flashback, which explains a lot about her character and her fears. In this flashback, she's a little girl. She's at the lake house with her family, and she's sitting on this bench facing the lake, and it is during a eclipse that is about to happen, a solar eclipse, and her dad comes over to her and gives her a pinhole projector so she can look directly at it, and she asks where's his. He said, oh, maybe mum took it, and we understand that something fishy is going on. She starts to look at the eclipse. He's talking to her, talking about family memories, talking about what a young girl she has become, a young woman, and coaxing her to sit on his lap. He makes her feel bad, saying, oh, you wouldn't want to do this, but it is such a fun family memory. I don't really want to go into too much detail, but as the eclipse is happening, she decides that she will give in to his request and sit on his lap. You hear his belt unbuckle, and he just tells her to keep looking at the eclipse while she's crying. It is an awful scene. You don't see anything, but the scene is just beyond emotionally horrific and scarring. And I love this film, but it is so tough to watch because of that scene. Now let's go to tier 4. Don't Breathe is such a fun film and has a lot of interesting twists. It's about 3 petty thefts who break into a man's house. He's blind and they are gonna rob him, but they've broken into the wrong man's house. He's a war veteran and he is very equipped and ready to go, but there's also a lot more to him. And in this scene, it is revealed just how evil this man truly is. So our lead character, Rocky, she has been grabbed by this man and she comes to while she's in this vest laying on the ground in the basement. We realize now he has a sinister plan for her, and this vest has like a pulley system, and he begins to pull her up. She asks him what he's doing, and he says, I am not a assaulter. I wouldn't do that. He just wants a child and he's done waiting. Now she's almost horizontal, suspended from the roof, and he goes and grabs a knife and cuts an area between her legs. And he says there is nothing a man cannot do when he accepts the fact there is no God. And then he finishes with 9 months and you'll get your life back. He then takes out a big turkey baster, people call it a turkey baster, but a big baster, and fills it up with a liquid that he has, sitting nearby, a personal liquid, and he approaches her. It is so scary and overwhelming. She is fighting, but just in this moment, he is struck and falls to the ground as someone else has come in to save her. She gets out of her harness, retaliates, is hitting on him, wailing on him, but then she grabs the baster and shoves it into his mouth, and it is spurting everywhere. Honestly, there are so many scenes here. I don't know how to order them on this iceberg, but this scene, it's not as bad because I guess she got away, but horrific. Next, Antichrist, Snip Snip. This is the infamous scene. A lot of people hate this scene. It is very quick though, and it takes place after the last scene we talked about, a couple of scenes after. He's been buried, he's crawling back. Anyway, in this moment, they are both in the house again. She dragged him back inside because he cannot move. And she starts speaking in riddles. She's talking about how the crying woman is the scheming woman. And then she removes her pants and asks him to touch her. And what you need to know about this scene is at the very start of the film, when the accident happened with their baby, who they are grieving, they were being intimate and the child was not being watched because of that. And he had an accident elsewhere in the house. So it kind of gives her flashbacks in this moment where they are being intimate together about what happened. As she's trying to escape it, she's bringing up those memories. So in a very quick swoop, she grabs some scissors, some shears, very sharp, very hefty, don't know the brand, and she goes and she snips down below on herself. It's very fast, but you do see everything. It's fast and alarming and disturbing. Okay, The Mist, another one that we have covered before, but it is very important and it has scarred a lot of people. The Mist is a movie based on a Stephen King book about a mist that rolls in through this town, and now strangers must come together who are stranded in a supermarket to try and survive. But in this scene, we follow a group that have left the supermarket. They're in a car and they're attempting to get away and survive on their own. But as they're rolling through the mist, the car runs out of fuel. And now, knowing that these things are around them and what could happen, they have a barrel, but not enough rounds to end everybody. So David, who is the main character, he and all of the other adults in the car look at each other and kind of silently agree that he will end them. and his son is also in the car. So he does this. He gets out of the car knowing that his fate is now determined by these creatures that will probably, tear him apart. But just as he's crying and dealing with the devastation of what he's just done to his new friends and his son, the mist dissipates and help rolls through in the form of several army trucks and survivors who are in different vehicles coming past them. And one of the group of survivors was a woman from the supermarket who urged that group to follow her. So that if they had followed her, they would have been fine. But also if he had just waited a minute, 2 minutes, everyone would have been saved. And it is a haunting, devastating ending to a film that is not originally in the book for once, leading us to everyone's favorite, the pole scene in Hereditary. This is the only Hereditary scene I'm including in this iceberg, but it is the most famous and the one that everyone talks about after the fact, although there are very disturbing moments throughout the whole film. But in this scene, you don't need to know much, but Peter has just gone to a party with his younger sister Charlie, and in the middle of the party Charlie starts to have an allergic reaction to some peanuts and she is grasping at her throat. He carries her out to the car hoping to get her some help, and as they're driving through this dark, long stretched main road where there's no one else, it is the most eerie situation. He is driving, she is clawing at her neck, trying to get some air. The end is coming soon for her. He is freaking out. She's across both seats and she opens the window. She's just trying to get air in any way. And when she puts her head out the window, just in this moment, Peter sees something on the road and swerves to the side, allowing her head to connect with a pole nearby, disconnecting it completely. We see it later in the film, but we don't see it in this moment. We just hear the sound of her body kind of slumping forward, and then the car rolls to a stop and Peter's reaction says everything. It's horrendous, it was shocking, and it was disturbing, and it sets up the whole film for them to be completely scarred by the situation in their own way. Obviously, there's a lot of other themes that transpire in this film, but that is the one that has really stuck with people. And then the last scene on this tier is the goat axe, back to when evil lurks, and this scene takes place on a farm, an isolated farm, where a man and his wife are standing near their goats, and the evil that we talked about has started to spread, and he believes that this goat in particular has it. He gets a barrel and he goes to use it on the goat, but his wife keeps pleading with him not to use the barrel because it will just let the evil spread, which is exactly what happened with the dog. And the blocking for this scene is insane because we then see this wide shot and the goat just goes straight up to the barrel and puts its head on it, and it kind of reveals that that evil is true, but it's also the goat asking him to do it and forcing him to make the evil spread, almost teasing him and inciting him to create more violence. He does end the goat, and in that second he is struck on the back by his wife, who has grabbed an axe, and without delay she starts going at him, and then she turns it around, the sharp end, and goes straight into her forehead. It happens within seconds. It's like goat, husband, wife, and all in such horrific manner, all side by side. It was such a visual indicator to the true evil and how quickly it spreads, and so devastating and so disturbing. It's the poster for the film, but nothing could have prepared me for that moment at all. Okay, tier 5. This is a redeemable entry for me because I heard your comments, and I think last time I spoke about Eyehole, I was talking about the wrong Eyehole, which is gross to say with the context of this one. But this is from The Sadness, which is a Taiwanese splatter horror. It kind of is, but it is a fantastic piece of work. But there are 2 scenes to do with the Eyehole, and it happens to be the same Eyehole. This is definitely the worst of them. You don't need to know much about the film, but it is about the spread of an infection throughout a city that causes people to turn into bloodthirsty sadists. In this scene, we follow this man who is one of the main villains or iconic villains in this story. And he is storming through this hospital when he comes across this woman who we'd seen earlier in this film. And she has been treated and she is in a wheelchair, but she has a couple of injuries, including a patch over her eye. And he says to her, "We meet again," because in the other Eyehole scene, he had poked his cane in there, which caused this injury. He says, "I remember you," and very nonchalantly, he takes off his jacket, places it down, and then he unzips his pants. He says, "I'm gonna have a lot of fun with you," and he removes the cover, the eye patch, from her eye, and the camera kind of trails up as we hear him putting himself into her eye. We cut to a nearby person who is hiding underneath a gurney, a table, and they are covering their ears and just shaking. No comment. Next, we have Speak No Evil. This scene is disturbing, but it's also very frustrating. A lot of people talk about it because it is so frustrating. This is the original film. Obviously, this was remade into an American version last year. And I'm going to call this Tongued and Stoned because it is two scenes technically put back to back, but I think the context from the first one is important for the second one anyway. But the whole thing is just awful, but particularly these scenes really sum up the movie. The film is about the relationship between two families, a Danish family and a Dutch family who meet on holiday, and the Danish family go to stay with the Dutch family and realize something is very wrong. But because of their polite nature throughout the film, they really play this down, and it becomes very aggravating for the viewer, but very dangerous for their situation. They have their child with them, and the first part of this scene, they are driving on a dark road, scared and being held hostage by this family. The Danish mother is holding their daughter in fear, but then the Dutch family kind of stop the car and they demand they let the girl go. What they end up doing is grabbing the family so they can't get to the daughter and holding her down and cutting out her. The family just watch in terror. The mum's kind of being held back, can hardly breathe. And then in a swift kind of swoop, the daughter exits the car and they keep driving, and they drive to the actual final scene of the film. So they're in panic, and there's this beautiful bridging music that goes over the top. It's kind of in slow motion and they're screaming. You can't really hear that. It's just the music. And they roll into this isolated area and are forced to get outside of the car. They are then forced to strip themselves naked. The man asks the perpetrator, "Why are you doing this to us?" And he says, "Because you let me." He then forces them to go into this big open ditch, and they throw stones, stoning them, and their bodies naked are left there, ended. It's a horrific ending to a film that is so frustrating because there's so many signs, and not even signs, just immediate danger that they keep ignoring. And to end in this way, completely hopeless, left viewers very disturbed. Next is a scene that I could not believe I saw in the cinema. And I absolutely love Midsommar, but this scene makes it so hard for me to chuck it on to just rewatch it. And I do want to say as well, if you have not watched Midsommar, the extended cut, you need to, because it puts a lot more context into the situation, more so other scenes that happen within the film, but I do really want to recommend that to you guys. I'm gonna have to set up the context of this situation because it just adds to the disturbing factor. But the film follows as Dani is having a crisis because her sister has sent her a really alarming email about her family, and she's trying to contact her sister. There is a shot where Dani has called and it's gone straight to voicemail, and we kind of trail throughout her family's house, and she is asking them to call her back. She's saying her sister has just sent her a message and it's really alarming. We know that she's unwell. Can you get back to me? I'm really scared. And obviously they do not hear this. Dani then calls her boyfriend Christian and is trying to kind of comfort herself by talking to him and asks him to hang out later. He is not very supportive and almost shames her for taking her sister's pleas or cries seriously, saying that she does this all the time and you let her. Dani says that her sister has bipolar, and even he saw the email and knew that something was off about it. And then it goes to Dani talking to another friend about the relationship that she had with Christian and how she feels about the situation. Then it cuts back to Christian in the bar talking about his reaction to the situation, and he's kind of bad-mouthing Dani in front of all of his friends. But then he receives a call from her, and we're getting to it now. And this call, he answers and she just starts wailing, and you just know the worst has happened. Now the Define scene begins. I hate this scene. We watch as first responders, bathed in emergency lights, turn off the car, which has a hose connected to the exhaust pipe. The hose travels through the house and I believe splits in two, and it's in a slow motion, kind of beautiful, soft scene where the emergency responders are running through the house and following where these hoses are going. And one goes off into the parents' bedroom. We now know that that voicemail that came through before, it wasn't that they didn't hear the call, it's that they were no longer with us because of the exhaust. We see the first responder kind of turn off the hallway, and it's revealed at the end of a long hallway while the camera's kind of slowly dollying towards it that her sister is there, and her sister has this hose taped to her face. The expression she has, it's so disturbing, and it is shown sprinkled throughout different backgrounds and symbolism throughout the movie. In the background, in trees, it's so unsettling and disturbing, and it becomes the catalyst of the whole film. And so many people focus on the cult aspect. I feel like this part is way more disturbing. The next one I want to talk about is the chained victim that is found in Martyrs. If you haven't seen Martyrs, it is a fantastic French-Canadian film, and it's best to give some context now because we're going to talk about it later as well. But it is about two women who are trying to find the abusers of one of them throughout their childhood, and they come across this house that is connected to this society, this underground society that tortures individuals, trying to get them or push them towards the end of themselves so they could possibly have a glimpse into what is on the other side, and if there is anything on the other side. That is the short version. But in this scene, we follow Anna, and this is the kind of the start of her finding where the secret society have hidden their lair in this house, and she unlocks this trap door which leads down to this victim, and this is the last victim they have in the house. And this figure is basically chained up with metal all around her body, naked, but it's all around her head. She can't see where she is. She's frail. She's injured all over from head to toe. But she gets her into a bath, and there's this disgusting moment where she's prying off this thing that is attached to her head and her skull. Anyway, the actual scene starts when she had fallen asleep after that whole ordeal, and she wakes up and realizes that the victim, the woman she found downstairs, she doesn't know where she is. So she gets up and she goes to try and find her, and she does find her. She's in a bedroom, and she's found a large sharp instrument, and she is hacking at her. It's so horrific. Just the way she is so desperate to end after everything she's been through, it is beyond disturbing. Anyway, they kind of wrestle, and then the victim runs down the hallway and is rubbing herself really unnaturally and strangely across this wall, and she is just in so much pain mentally and physically. And right as that's happening, a barrel hits her, and she is ended. And that's when the society come in and take Anna. Just the pain and suffering that this woman has gone through definitely stuck with me. Next, the picnic scene in the house that Jack built. This is defined as a slasher horror, which I think is so strange on IMDb. This is a very strange movie by Lars von Trier, but what did we expect? It's about a violent sociopath who recounts his life's work as a serial killer. And in this scene, he is with a woman and her two younger children. They are going to go have a picnic, so they think, but he's also planning on hunting deer at the same time. The movie is very dialogue heavy because it's him explaining the scene in past tense. And as he's kind of talking to them about hunting, it cuts to pictures of deer, and then it cuts straight directly back to him hunting the family. And he's talking about the order that he's going to hunt them in. You don't really see the progression, it just goes straight to it. It's the happy moment of the family being here, straight to them hiding from him. And he does get one of the kids, you see that one of the kids run across a field and he gets them. But what happens afterwards is he has the picnic that was planned. He's sitting there still talking to them while the mother is completely distressed, and just the look on her face, she's in shock. She can't even comprehend what's just happened. And then he makes her force feed her past children food, and he's instructing her on what to do. In between that, he's talking about her favorite number. He's so nonchalant about the whole thing. It's just disturbing. And the way that what you see, one of the boys is kind of propped up his corpse. The scene ends with him counting down, and she realizes that he is signaling to her that she has, 10 seconds to run and get out of there before he gets her. And he does so. He hunts her too. The next one, it's okay to laugh. It's awful, but it's okay to laugh because it's not serious at all, but it did leave me speechless and disturbed, and it's something that I've always thought about. A lot of people don't get all the way to Human Centipede 3, and I get you. I know why people don't want to go this far, but what you need to know about the third entry is it is unbelievably goofy. It is a satire, it's hyperbolic, it's over the top. It follows a warden who plans on making a human millipede out of prisoners. And he is awful. This film has all of the original actors from the different films come back in different roles. So the late Dieter Laser, he is back and he is the warden. And in this scene, he wakes up kind of drunk in the cafe or cafeteria of the prison. And suddenly he is surrounded by all of these inmates that he has done horrendous things to. And they start circling him. He falls to his knees. He's pleading, don't hurt me, don't do anything to me. And then the lead inmate for this scene, inmate 297, who you guys probably know as Robert Lasado, he takes charge and he says, it's time for you to be fucked like the rest of us. But then he says, I'm not going to do it in your bottom. And he takes a shank and he cuts into a kidney bean and says, I'm gonna cut you a new hole. And then he performs an adult act in that hole in front of everyone. There's a lot of crazy scenes in these films, but that one, I could not believe. I've never seen anything like that. Anyway, the warden wakes up. It was a dream sequence. Worst dream sequence ever. And it's kind of funny because he was smoking a cigar and the cigar had fallen onto the floor and got caught where his kidney was, so he felt the pain there. So that's where the dream came from. I've never heard anyone talk about that scene, so I just had to breathe it into existence. Probably not the best thing to do, actually. The next scene is one that a lot of people always talk about. It's the bone tomahawk split. Banana split, a lot of people call it the split scene. The movie is a Western horror and it's about a small town and sheriff who set out to rescue several of their townspeople from a brutal cannibalistic tribe. This scene is brutal. The townspeople, a small group of them, are locked behind bars by the perpetrators, and then the perpetrators take one of them and bring them out in front of them. And using a very sharp instrument, they remove their hair, like a wig, like you would separate it from the head. And then they turn this person upside down, shove what they've taken off into their mouth and cut them from in between their legs all the way down, and everything pours out. And you watch from the point of view of the people watching their friend go through this from behind the bars. So it has a strange level of distance that makes you feel very helpless. Speaking of very graphic scenes, the next one is the Martyrs conclusion that everyone talks about, Flayed. This scene is because Anna has become the cult's latest victim, and it's at the end of the film where she has been pushed to this brink that I was talking about. She's at, the door. And the way that they have done so is excruciating. They have pulled apart everything off her, like skinning, I guess, a rabbit. You would think about that. You can see everything except her face is still intact. She's in a crucifixion pose, looking up, and just the hurt and pain and suffering is enough. But what happens is the leader of this organization then enters the house and goes up to her and hopes to finally hear the truth about life and death. And Anna does whisper something into her ear. We don't hear it as the audience, but then this head of the organization goes to the bathroom and immediately uses a barrel on herself, leaving the audience to speculate the true meaning of life and everything that's just happened. There's not many films that can keep up the brutality mentally and physically with such intensity that they end on something that blew you away with its content and afterthought. That's why people never forget this film and never stop talking about it. Okay, 2 tiers left to go. It only gets worse. Tier 6, let's talk about the rat and blowtorch in Terrifier 3. Some of you guys probably know I went to see Terrifier 3 at the local premiere and 2 people fainted. And I wouldn't believe it myself if it didn't happen in front of me. It's been documented, the staff had to document that kind of stuff. It's wild. This scene was after that, but I think it's the most intense scene of this third film. I don't think you need much context for any of the Terrifier films. All you need to know is it's about Art and his friends, his little lunatic friends who are terrorizing people. And this one has Art and Victoria as the villains. In this scene, Jessica and Sienna are sitting tied to chairs while they're being tormented by Victoria and Art. And Victoria reveals a present that is on the table. Unwrapping it, inside is a skull and rats on top of it. And she tells Jessica that that is her child. And so Jessica goes into hysterics, obviously. Sienna's just sitting there watching, unable to do anything. And then Victoria goes and gets a glass pipe and shoves it into Jessica's, and then gets a mallet and really makes sure it's stuck in there. Then she picks up some of the rats and puts them into the pipe, and then grabs a blowtorch just to finish it off to force them down. She is already gone. She is already gone once the pipe was put in, because it basically split her, and they go down. To finish it off, she decides to open this part of her body and the rats come out. What? How do you think of that kind of stuff? They then reveal that the skull is not Jessica's child, but instead it's Sienna's brother. And Sienna goes into hysterics. And then they also put a crown of thorns onto Sienna, and it's just vital fluid everywhere. It really struck me, just the rats and the blood. That's very creative. I really hate this next scene because it is very realistic, and I tried to look up to see if it is real. The films are all listed down below, but we're going to talk about the Cannibal Holocaust turtle scene in just a tick, and this one is quite similar, so just letting you know. You don't see anything too graphic, but you see the aftermath, which is somehow worse. I watched Wedding Trough, also known as the pig fucking movie. I watched this for a video I did, I don't even know what video, but a video I did sometime last year, and I honestly, this was one of the worst things I've ever seen. This is a art house horror film, and it's set in Belgium, where out in an isolated farm, this man is very attached to his pig, and the pig gives birth to piglets. They're normal looking piglets. I don't understand who the father is. I don't really want to know. And although he spends time with these piglets, he gets quite frustrated at them. I'll show you this scene. I can show you this. They're all drinking from different milks, and he wants them to kind of act like children, but they're pigs, so they're not going to be sitting at the table drinking like little children. He gets quite frustrated, and it cuts directly from this scene to a shot of all of his birds he has on the farm, so like ducks and geese and turkeys, and you know, they're all clucking and making sounds, and then there's just these little piglets, and they're strung up by rope in a more like humanistic kind of way of ending yourself. And it's this shot that has this beautiful light that's kind of peering through, and the tone is completely off. The way it's framed is just like meant to be a pretty thing, but it's so vile. So let's talk about the turtle thing and get that done. A lot of people hate this scene. I feel like I try and downplay it in my mind, not to anyone. I feel like everyone is very justified in how they feel about anything to do with film, but this I try and downplay, and I don't rewatch it very often, so rewatching it for this video was not a fun experience. Cannibal Holocaust is one of the most controversial films of all time for very good reasons, and the animal restrictions back then for film were very different. But I mean, this film got done for a lot of different aspects in it, and this won't be the only time we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about another scene very shortly. The movie is about a rescue team that go deep into the Amazon to locate a crew of missing filmmakers and meet a local cannibalistic tribe. The way this is shot, it's very realistic, it's found footagey, it's point of view. The camera's kind of moving all around as they grab a turtle and end it using a machete. Unfortunately, it is all real. A girl who's witnessing it starts heaving. The animal is still moving in some parts. You see everything. People justify this because the animal was given to the villagers, the real villagers who lived there after this. Honestly, I don't really care to form an opinion on it. I don't like this film for many reasons, and this is just one example of the animals. There are a lot of animals that meet their end throughout this film, and it's all real. It's kind of hard to put that on this iceberg, because like, how do you grade disturbingness for that? Anyway, let's go back to Terrifier. We've got Allie's death, which is the worst scene in any of the Terrifier films. This is from the second movie. This is a scene that seems to go on forever and is so brutal. I don't think you can beat it in terms of this kind of fictional torture. This takes place in Allie's house, where she goes downstairs because she hears someone, and there is Art getting a drink of water, acting very, oh, I broke into your house to get a drink of water because I'm parched. Anyway, he chases her up the stairs and he brutalizes her. He has his own set of tools. He removes almost like a wig, you know, he does that one, and he starts just bending things and breaking things, and she attempts to escape. She's crawling across the ground. He leaves, and you think that might be it. Then he comes back with salt and he decides to rub it in everything. It is the most brutal scene ever. I can't show you any of it. It only ends because the mother comes in and you see her reaction, and the room is just painted. It's just red. I don't know how they could follow that, and they haven't been able to match that in any of the films. Okay, another film that is controversial and pretty widely hated is Megan is Missing. Hobbling. And this is a found footage film about two teen girls that are kidnapped by someone they met online. And there is a scene that people always talk about, the barrel scene, that is the most disturbing moment. Editing Emma just dropping in here for a second. I am meaning an actual barrel, this kind of barrel in this scene, not the normal barrel we use as a code. So Megan, or Megan, we say Megan here in Australia, she has been missing. She's gone, as the title says, and her friend has gone to go look for her and been kidnapped herself. And the scene starts where the perpetrator, we see through his point of view, he is going into a cell that he is keeping the other girl in, and he opens it and he's trying to gently waken her up, and he is telling her, "Princess, it's time to wake up." He's kind of telling her he's going to take her home and untying her. Obviously not in the right state of mind. She gets up and she thinks she's going to go see Megan, and he takes her and tells her, "You need to get into this huge barrel because you can't see where I live, and I'm going to take you home, but you've got to get in the barrel. You'll understand, right? Like, you just can't see where I live, so I can get away with this." She agrees, but when she opens the lid of the barrel, Megan is inside, and the look on her face is insane. Her mouth is wide open, her eyes are just looking up, and just the expression, the decay, it is horrendous. She runs away screaming. Her friend has expired in it's just awful. He grabs her, and off camera, we're on the ground, the camera's been dropped, you can hear as he is forcing her into the barrel, but the idea of her being, not only what has happened to her friend, but then her being forced to be squished on top in the barrel. It's awful. Okay, tier 7, just so you know, the Nightingale was meant to be here, but it did not cross the horror boundary. I don't want to break the rule too many times, so I've removed it. If you do want the other Iceberg, please let me know. And while we're here, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I very much appreciate it. Huge shout out to my patrons as well for all of your support. My Patreon is only $2 a month, and you get bonus videos every single week. I also offer different tiers that have Discord access, all that fun stuff, hangouts, if you want to hang out with me some more. But the bonus videos are very fun. I just did a reaction to the new Megan trailer. Tier 7, let's go. Ritualistic punishment in Cannibal Holocaust. Another scene I feel like doesn't get spoken about enough. I know a lot of these scenes though from this film are pretty brutal. So there is a crew that is sitting on the beach as they're watching a local bring in a canoe, and in the canoe is a woman, and she is bound by rope. He drags her onto the bank, which is just covered in mud, and ties her in a way that she is open. The people who are watching then say that this looks like a ritualistic punishment for adultery, and they watch as this villager picks up this rock, phallic shaped rock, and then brutalize her with it in a SA manner. And it is so intense. You see her facial features, lots of close-ups. It's just a gross scene, especially with these people watching. And he actually takes part of the mud and shoves it into places. And then finally he ends her with the rock, just pounding onto her skull. The next disturbing movie I really do like. It is a very hard watch, but it is made so well. The performances are beautiful. If you're looking for a disturbing movie that is worth the hurt, I don't know if it is, but will traumatize you. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I think it's Kelvier, but it is called The Ordeal. That's the English title. It's a film from Belgium. It's a psychological horror where we follow a entertainer who is traveling back home for Christmas, but his van breaks down in the middle of nowhere. And it just so happens that the local town closest to him is full of deranged people. And he thinks that they're taking him in to help him, but they end up having their own sinister reasons. And he has this transformation where they basically destroy his van and turn him into what they want him to be to fulfill any trauma they have had. They dress him, they shave him, they give him a new name. He loses his identity completely and his autonomy. They do a lot of things to him, everything you can think of. But arguably, the worst scene, or the scene at the peak of the film, I don't know what to call this because there is other assault scenes. This is a very good sum up of the disturbing feeling that this movie conveys, and it is bird's eye view. It's almost Gaspar Noé cinematography where we watch him get pushed into this room, and the room seems like a barn. I can't tell you how these people live. It's wild. There's like cows in the room. There's a pig. You can hear the animals, but there's the dining table, and he is pushed into the room. We're watching on top, and it's kind of rotating It's very interesting, the cinematography of it. It's very rotating and it's bright red. All you can see is red. Not because of vital fluid, just because of the grading and the lighting. And you watch a group of men, one of them brutalize him, essaying him over the table. There's pigs squealing, there's cows, there is a man with a barrel that goes off. The men are screaming over each other, and it is just the most intense, chaotic scene. One of the most intense I've ever seen. He has become in the town the person that everyone takes their aggression out on, the person that everyone is missing in their life, the person who has hurt them in their life, and it is a very powerful and horrendous scene. Very disturbing. Okay, Human Centipede, Barbed Wire, another one I don't hear people talk about too often. I think a lot of people, again, stay away from any sequel or maybe even just Human Centipede in general. But Human Centipede 2 is a commentary on people absorbing violent films in a way. But we watched the villain who was inspired by the first film create a 12-person centipede. And a lot of people talk about the baby scene, but I really want to talk about this because I feel like it's lesser known because people just avoid the film, understandably. This happens after the centipede has already created full sequence, and they are roaming around in pain and anguish, and he is soaking it up. He is enjoying every moment. For him, he has just created a masterpiece, the villain in the situation, and he doesn't know what to do with himself because he's getting so excited. And he gets that excited that he begins to get ready to do something to the end of the centipede. And to maximize the scene, he wraps barbed wire around his member, and then he decides to SA the end of the centipede. And that's all I got to say about that. Next, no horror disturbing scene, Iceberg, is complete without at least mentioning a Serbian film. Obviously, a lot of people talk again about the baby scene, and just so I'm not repeating myself too much, we're just going to talk about the reveal. So the movie is about Milos, who is an adult movie star, and he has decided to take on one last project, and it's sold to him as an art film. He tries to back out, especially when he sees the baby scene, and he is given substances against his will. A lot happens in this movie, but it all leads to this final conclusion where he is filming the final scene, and he kind of comes to because he is so out of his mind, and he sees his brother is next to him also performing on someone while he is. The two people who are with them in this scene, their identity is concealed. But finally, after they're going at it for a long time, it is revealed who the people are that have their identity concealed. And his brother is actually performing with his wife against her will, and he is actually doing that with his son. It's so awful. I really meant it when I said disturbing. Okay, only two more. Let's move on to The Green Elephant. I watched this because of the last Iceberg, and I think they got the scene completely wrong, because although this film has a very dramatic conclusion, there is one scene before that that is so realistic that I was wrenching. Honestly, I think that this actually made me yak. The movie is just about two prisoners who are in a cell, and one is driving the other one to the brink of madness because he is unhinged and he keeps talking in circles and acting strange, and he cannot reason with him. So it's him and his bunkmate, and his bunkmate's asleep, and he crawls down and gets a plate and just unzips his pants, and he decides that he's going to make a Snickers bar. And he does this, he eats it with his fingers, rubs it everywhere. It is so long. The scene is so long, and I thought I had an iron stomach, and I think that this scene actually broke me because now I cannot look at anything that resembles that in films or anything like that. It really has got to me. It's totally lobotomy material. This scene is so hard to watch. And I've watched a lot of other things that have similar aspects, but this one, it's so realistic and it goes on forever. His bunkmate does wake up and freaks out on him. Thank God someone is having the same reaction as I am. It was so bad. Just the way it happens is so horrendous. And the last scene on the Iceberg, I can't believe we actually made it, is from Trauma. And this is the opening of the film, so you don't need any context. But if you've seen it, let me know. Please, if you've made it this far in the video, let me know that I'm not the only one. So he watches the camera kind of tilts up in a way, and it reveals a woman sitting on a chair. She's been completely brutalized and her legs are open, and there's just caked vital fluid everywhere. You can't see much because of that. But what you can see is a man is being dragged out of the room by a soldier, and there's a couple of other soldiers behind her. And you can hear screaming in the background coming from different places in this building. There are candles. It is like a dungeon-esque environment. Her eye is kind of half swollen shut. She has awful injuries all over her body. And then a commander comes in, or whoever's in charge, he comes in and he starts screaming at her. He accuses her of lying and he's just going at her. And then another younger man is brought in, and we understand very fast that this is her son. He is injected with fluid that I believe makes him out of his mind in some way or another, to do with his lower region. And then he is forced to with his mum. It is a very long scene, and during it she is ended and he keeps going. And I guess to make it even worse, the film does start with the titles, which claim to be based on true events. I think it's one of the worst things I've ever seen in a movie. And there you go. Thank you so much if you stayed all the way to the end. I do apologize for putting Sixth Sense in there. I also had The Nightingale, which I took it off while I was recording, realizing that's not a horror movie. And if you did get all the way here, let's put something really fun in the comments to confuse anyone else who dropped out because they couldn't hack it, which is understandable. Let's go with, I would have put the rubber ducky scene a lot later. There's a rubber ducky here. That's why I thought that. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Honestly, just watching this supports me greatly, and I'm trying to buy a new computer so I can do long videos like this. It takes me so long because I do it all on a laptop. So thank you so much. You really helped. Don't forget to subscribe if you do like disturbing content. If you haven't checked out the other Iceberg, it has very different scenes to this one. Check that one out here. And also I did a video where I tier ranked all of the Saw traps in great detail. You'll want to check that out if you also like long content, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Stay safe, stay spooky, and go touch some grass. I'm going to right now.